Check. Hey, hey. Check. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Hmm. Check. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Trey,
How are you, my friend?
doing well. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Thanks for having the chat.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for your time. You having a good day so far?
Yeah, yeah. Just standard Wednesday, trying to catch up from Monday and get things situated for the weekend and all the things. So yeah, we got a lot coming up. Mia's dad had surgery, so she's going to go up to Pittsburgh and be with him for a few days.
Gotcha.
So trying to get ahead of that, and then you got two kids with school and all the after school curricular stuff. So
That's
it's
crazy.
I'm complaining. It sounds like I'm complaining. I'm really not. It's just sort of one of those like, oof, when you think about all the stuff.
Yeah.
Just organization is paramount.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Life is
How are
full.
you?
Doing good. Just grinding, man, trying to do I can't remember when we got coffee, it was February 21.
It was either was it 20? Has it been
No, 22,
two years?
22. It had to have been 22.
Okay, yeah, that makes more sense. 22.
Um, but yeah, I can't remember if we talked much about this. I work for a nonprofit
Hmm.
locally. So juggling that, my wife's a teacher, running Pine and stuff like that, and also getting my master's.
Oh, good for you.
So kind of,
What do you get? What are you studying?
um, I'm doing kind of general study right now. I
Okay,
think I'm gonna land on counseling.
okay.
Um, yeah, master's in
Like
counseling, but
clinical stuff or
sort of it'll be more in the like church nonprofit
okay,
realm. So just still trying to figure out what I want to do exactly,
cool.
but
Well, good for
um
you, man.
yeah, love health and fitness and nutrition and all the things. So
Oh yeah,
been doing that. Well, if you're good with it, I have a series of questions. Just want to hear
sure.
from you kind of about your experience and want to be also honor your time as well. So
No,
um
I got all the time you need, my man.
sweet. Let's do it. Um, well, let's start easy. Tell me a little bit about you. I know we talked some when we got coffee, but a little bit about you, what you do currently.
Yeah, so I currently own Whitebelt Athletics, which is a local CrossFit gym in Chattanooga, Tennessee. Prior to that was started in May of 2019, right before the world sort of went haywire. So it's
Yeah,
been sort of an interesting journey to kind of navigate all those ins and outs. Before that, I was a college professor of kinesiology, particularly coaching education. So I was at Georgia Southern University and was sort of had kind of a dual role. I had some individual sports stuff, particularly baseball, but I really sort of got to by default got put into the strength and conditioning area, and I didn't have any background in it, didn't really have much experience. Had to teach some of the classes, I think, really because people didn't want to teach it, and I was the low man on the totem pole, so they said, "Here you go, here teach this
right.
particular class." Um, and then about the same, well, probably a few years after that, I discovered CrossFit. My wife got me a membership to a local gym down in Statesboro, and immediately sort of fell in love with the exposure to some of the things that I had never really
Mhm.
done as an athlete. gymnastics, and real Olympic lifting are the two that I'm primarily talking about. I started coaching about 6 months after that in the gym, and then just sort of started using the gym as a lab for some of the academic stuff that I was talking about. And about 2017, we had the opportunity to move back home, which is Chattanooga. And I had been in the market to maybe run my own gym for a couple of years, and then finally got the opportunity to do that in 2019. And we've been kind of trying to figure this thing out ever since.
Yeah, that's awesome. I had forgotten you were at Georgia Southern. I'm from Georgia. I went to KSU,
Okay.
Kennesaw State, right up
Yep.
there. That's really cool.
Yeah.
So your first exposure to CrossFit was walking in a box for the first
Actually,
time?
no. Actually, no. So I had a colleague who had technically owned an affiliate years before affiliates were kind of in mainstream. This was before Rogue. This was before,
Right.
the standard stuff. And so he had had a quote unquote affiliate for a while, but it was very much a side gig. Well, he asked me to do a CrossFit workout in the, or what would you call it, the big rec center at Georgia Southern, and it just destroyed me. And it was, I mean, looking back on it, it's a very basic workout. I mean, it was a 500 row, 40 air squats, right? I mean, it was a very
Right.
sort of, now by now standards, it wasn't, it's not that difficult of a workout. Well, it just destroyed me. A couple years later, I started following HQ and doing the workouts by myself
Mm.
in what amounted to a little cubby gym in the bottom of the arena at Georgia Southern. But at that point, I was, I didn't have any coaching. I was, I had limited equipment, so I was having to modify a bunch of things. And quite frankly, if the workout said 5 rounds and I was tired, I'd just do 3 and kind of call it a day. And then Mia, my wife, bought me a membership to the local gym at that point, and
Mm.
that was when was that? January of 13 is when I
Okay.
started in an actual affiliate. And
Okay.
so that was my first experience was outside of the gym, outside of a box, and then I found the box later on, and the experience between those two out of the gym and in the gym are not even close to the same things.
Oh
At
yeah.
least they were for me.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. That's really cool. I remember when we met a little while ago, we were talking about CrossFit, ended up jumping on the CrossFit, not bandwagon, definitely drank the Kool-Aid though. And
Yeah,
with Justin doing some stuff in the garage.
yeah,
And one of the things she said, because I was at D1 at
oh
the
yeah.
time, and I was like, oh yeah, it's whatever, it's this sports training thing. And you're like, what are you training for? Like, are you training for a sport? I was like, no, I'm not.
Yeah,
And that like kind of got the wheels turning of like,
yeah.
oh, like what is functional fitness? What does CrossFit do? What do they prepare you for? And
Hmm.
stuff like that. So what would you say the biggest thing CrossFit or learning more about functional fitness has taught you from like the health and fitness perspective?
Well, yeah, it's a good question. So I think the older I get, the more I gain experience in this arena. Um, it sort of goes back to first principles. So, when you first started watching, old school, quote unquote, old school CrossFitters, it was just intensity, intensity, intensity. It was like, just
Hmm.
go as hard as you can every single day and it'll be fine. And as I continue to learn from people smarter than me, people like Mark Sisson and Kelly Starrett and, uh, Peter Tia and Andrew Huberman, people that are very, very bright people that have been in this space for a long time. Mia's trying to tiptoe like we can't see her back here. So, um, it goes back to, you know, if you're going to do this for a long time and you're going to be functionally fit, meaning occupy your space in the world, meaning be able to sit and get up and down off the ground and play with your grandkids and do whatever it is that your daily life looks like. It's got to be a little more sophisticated than just beat your head into the floor every single day of every single workout,
Mm-hmm.
because there's so many more lifestyle behaviors that I think matter now. And that, for me, this is what really CrossFit sort of has done. My exposure to CrossFit and my exposure to sort of this long-term health and functionally fit sort of arena has really made me think about, it's an entry point, right? The exercise is an entry point to other things. Okay, I'm sitting at my desk. I know I need to work out. So what can I do? Okay, I'm going to go do some deadlifts, some kettlebell swings, and running and jump roping or whatever, right? Whatever it looks like from a functional fitness perspective. And after a while, you're like, okay, I feel a little bit better, but how can I level up a little bit? Oh, well,
Mm-hmm.
how's your sleep? Oh, you're not sleeping, but 4 hours a night. Well, let's check that off.
Right.
Oh, you're not eating real food. Let's check that off. Oh, you're not drinking enough, water or electrolyte or whatever it is. Let's check that off. And so it became an entry point for me to figure out what other behaviors actually matter, maybe even more so than the exercise. Exercise is super important, but are there other things that you cannot buffer after a certain age, right? Like when you're 22, you can just crush workouts. It doesn't matter how you eat. It doesn't matter how you sleep. And you can come in the next day and just kill it.
Right.
Well, you start having kids, you start having real jobs with stress and bills and whatnot. That equation doesn't work anymore. And for CrossFit, for me, it was, okay, the workouts are fine. Like, you just do the work, you do whatever, you compete, you don't compete. That's really doesn't really bother me. But what it turned into was, oh, I've got to prioritize sleep. I've got to prioritize spending time with my family so that I can develop these relationships that are very fruitful and long-term and lasting and loving. And so it was an entry point for me. It was, what else can I do that is surrounding the exercise that allows me to be a better human overall?
Yeah, that's really good. It's almost like once you dip your toe into one area, like the onion layers just start peeling back, and you're like, oh my gosh, I can't just work
Yeah,
out and everything is great. Like,
that's right.
there's so many factors that
That's right.
go
And
into it.
and the more you peel back, the more you realize, oh, I am really not in an optimal place. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, I think that's really a nice way to look at it. It's like, once you
Mm-hmm.
start, it's like, how do you peel the layers to get even better and better and better? And then you realize it's just an ongoing, it's an infinite game.
Right.
And it's just something that you just try to keep playing.
Yeah.
You're never going to win it. You're not going to, there's no gold medal in health.
Right.
You just do what you can to keep getting after it.
Right. Yeah. It makes total sense. That's so good. I love that answer. So you're introduced to CrossFit, you come back up here, open white belt, and you're seeing people come into your gym that haven't peeled back those layers quite yet. What's one way that you help people, yes, focus on the workouts, focus on, like, hey, you definitely want to be able to make it through the workout, all that, but also teach them the other things of, like, it's not just coming in the gym, it's this
Yeah.
to improve your health.
Yeah, there's a couple of ways that we try to do that. One is, I think for a lot of people, it was kind of similar to me in that, excuse me, it was, we try to use this as an entry point to behavioral systems or habits that allow them to get better over time. And so, look, beginner gains are a thing. And so somebody comes in and hasn't done a lot, and we teach them some basics and learn how to move and deadlift and press and do all the things that are safe, right, but allow performance to get better. At some point, that trajectory is going to flatten out. And at that point, those conversations can really start to happen. It's like, Trey, I'm not, my performance isn't quite as good as it was, or it's not improving like it was. And then you can start to have those conversations like, oh, okay, well, what is going on outside of the gym that might be affecting what's going on inside the gym, right? I mean, the 23 hours outside of the gym are always going to beat the hour that you're in there. And so what are we doing outside of the gym to take care of mobility issues, to improve sleep, to, whatever. And so I think for a lot of times we can use the exercise as the barrier to start having those conversations. But what we have started to do a little bit better, and we need to continue to get better at this, is to use social media as a quasi educational piece so that people can understand in these little infographics, not to have a deep dive conversation, but to just sort of have little touch points where, oh, sleep not only affects your performance, but it also affects your food tolerance. It affects how what your glucose and insulin sensitivity and resistance might be the next day. Like those types of little connections of the dots become at least it at least makes those conversations easier because it's not the first time that they've heard them. Right. It's like, hey, we posted something on Instagram the other day. Like, did you catch that post? And
Yeah.
like, yeah, I saw that. And you're like, cool. Like, what are you doing that'll help you hydrate or, whatever.
Sure.
And so those are the real two ways that we try, or that we have found that we can have those conversations with people. One is you kind of have to let them get there on their own, because if you start to lecture them, they're going to tune out. So you kind of let them do what they're doing. And then when they ask you about why isn't something going on that they think shouldn't go on, well, then you can start having those conversations.
Mm-hmm.
And then two, we use these little touch points through social media or what have you that just sort of connect a little bit of dots. And then all of a sudden you have a conversation like, oh, saw that post. Can you tell me a bit more about your nutrition program? Great. And then you can, hopefully move people along that path to utilize all of the services that will actually help them become long-term healthy people.
Yeah, that's really good. What's one of the biggest like success stories you've seen of someone coming in the gym, maybe super out of shape, maybe they don't look like they're out of shape, but they have a long way to go, and they walked in this way and they are killing it right now?
Yeah, we've probably, and this is not something that we've done a great job of, is highlighting some of the successes that we've had, and we've had some we probably have half a dozen that are pretty dramatic changes pre-post or pre-mid. I guess technically they're not done, and we haven't done a very good job of that. But a couple of people come to mind. One, John, we have a member who's been with us probably three years now. Josh Lee, who had really struggled with, not physically, because he's a good athlete. I think a lot of this is psychological issues, right? So he had this certain weight that he wanted to get to, and it was just the thing that kept driving him. And we ended up, through actually nutrition coaching, sort of changing the mindset a little bit so that he's focusing on things that are maybe a little bit more impactful for his long-term health and wellness. It just so happened that his performance goes up too.
Yeah.
And it's not performance that we were working on. We were working on, some mentality things that might help him, not just in the exercise, but also in the food and the sleep and all the things else. So he's one that stands out. We've got one that's been with us for just over a year. He has to have lost 60 pounds at this point. Dramatic. Wow. And it's interesting because you have to continually remind him how far he's come, right? Because he wants the beginner gains all the time. And it's like, look, you're so much better than you used to be. Just keep working the plan.
Right.
There's a few others that are noteworthy as well. But I think just as much as physical change, meaning weight loss or muscle mass or whatever, I think the real challenge becomes changing people's mindset. And we have a few that have done that. And those are arguably cooler than the physical part, but they're harder to measure. And so it becomes, it's more difficult to sort of highlight those people. But there's been several that we've had, and we've been talking about this recently about how we need to do a better job of putting these people out there and back. Look, this is legit, and these people have done an amazing work, and you can too, if you're doing the right types of things.
Yeah. I love the differentiation you made between there's people in the gym getting big, they have physical change, but even also as important, maybe more important than just the physical change, is the mindset change. You have someone who walks in thinking that they can't do anything right, or they can't do something big or accomplish a goal, and then they're crushing their first AMRAP or whatever
Yeah.
it is. That's
Yeah. I
super
mean,
powerful.
look, one of the famous quotes from Greg Glassman, who was the founder of CrossFit, and look for all of the, was Greg Glassman good for CrossFit or whatever else, but he's got some pretty interesting thoughts on the whole process. But one of his big quotes was, the biggest change that a CrossFitter will experience is between their two ears. Like, he didn't even mention the physical part, which is obviously the easiest and most visible way to look at change. But he contends that the biggest adaptation that CrossFit will allow someone to have is psychologically, is between their ears. And that becomes a super impactful thing, because it permeates everything else in your life as well. Like, oh, you go through this really hard AMRAP workout. You just did a really hard thing. So what else can you push through when things get rough? And we know that they will. And those become very, very important conversations to have with people. It's like, no, you are not just working out. You are changing your life because of the way you think about things, because of the way you're going about things, because of your habits. Those are really, really foundationally what we're doing here. Like, we're not making people lose weight.
Right.
We're just using those as a vehicle to do other stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And the more I gain experience with this, that's the real game here. It's, how do you change people's lives below a surface level of, oh, I lost a percent body fat this month, which is super important. Don't get me wrong.
Sure.
Like,
Yeah.
I'm as superficial as the next person about that kind of stuff. But
Right.
I also know or believe that it's deeper than that if you allow it to be.
Right. Oh yeah, 100%. That's awesome. It's like you're peeling back the onions of health and fitness and all the things that you can do, but you're also peeling back the onion of like, oh, if I can do this, I can do boom,
That's
boom,
right.
boom, boom, boom.
Yeah,
That's
transferability,
awesome.
man. We're such huge fans of transferable skills. Transferability is a big. I think it's a massively underrated thing. And if I can have a skill set that transfers to something else, I have a leg up um, on maybe somebody else that doesn't have that transferability. So
Right. Right. Yeah, for sure. Let's dip into the nutrition world for a little bit.
yeah,
Um, you mentioned just a second ago, like y'all coach for the long term. Like y'all
hmm
aren't just coaching for the short term gains, the six pack, the big lift,
yep,
or whatever. Like you want to coach to give people like long term abilities and skills to help them. Um, y'all have a nutrition program.
we do.
Are y'all through HSN? Did y'all?
We are. Yep,
Okay.
Healthy Steps Nutrition, which actually is a partner company with Precision Nutrition. So
Really?
yeah. So
I did not know that.
the nutrition science part of HSN's curriculum is from Precision Nutrition. That's my understanding.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's
So
really
they're
cool.
very similar in philosophy and the way they think about nutrition. I think there's a lot of alignment there.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
awesome. I didn't know that. I
Yeah.
keep seeing HSN stuff all over. I haven't checked them out yet.
Yeah.
So yeah, tell me about what y'all do at White Belt for nutrition, helping people dial that
Yeah.
in.
Yeah. So I just brought on a registered dietitian on staff. We started the program May of 21, I think, something, June 21, somewhere around there. It lasted about a year in the way that it worked out. And then I had to take over basically the whole program, and just brought Hannah on for nutrition coaching. So registered dietitian, she's awesome. She was actually just started being a member of the CrossFit gym in February. So she's sort of just in. She's been working out for a long time, but just sort of got into the CrossFit space.
Yeah.
She's fantastic. So I love the fact that I have a registered dietitian on staff. Like that's a big deal. But the HSN program and Whitebelt Nutrition, we really try to simplify nutrition so that people get results. I mean, that's really our tagline in Whitebelt Nutrition. We want to simplify the nutrition piece so that you get amazing results, because we know that you could Google one thing and find a boatload of stuff. Whether those things are even right or not,
Yep.
correct, wrong, however you want to, whether they're even actionable is another sort of part of this. And so we really try to develop a holistic habit-based nutrition program where we discuss sleep and hydration and stress and whole foods along with, sort of the dietary pieces. So not only is it food, but it's also food and how that relates to sleep, exercise, stress, et cetera, et cetera. So what we try to do is slowly but surely build habits so that people make better choices more often over time. And so we believe that if our inputs change, our outputs change. That's really what it turns into. So very simple, very slow. Like we don't overhaul anything fire sale, right? It's not one of those things where, you can never have a piece of pizza anymore.
Right.
It's like,
yeah.
who wants to live that way?
Right.
But if we can make better decisions, 80% or greater of the time, then we believe that people are going to get to their goals over time eventually, right? I mean, it's just kind of the idea.
Yeah. Since y'all have been offering nutrition coaching and have had people obviously in your gym and in your nutrition program, what would you say is the biggest gap that you see? Like, what's the biggest need? You mentioned like, hey, anybody can go Google like keto diet or meal prep diet or whatever, but where's the gap between that general stuff and like where the rubber meets the road?
I actually think the actionable step is where people sort of miss. They need the most help. I am firmly believe that Tim Ferriss has a saying, who's an entrepreneur author. He has a saying that says a good program that you follow will beat a perfect program that you won't. And so what people do typically is they're like, all right, Monday, I'm going to go on a diet. And they might be really good for 2 weeks or 3 weeks or even a month. They might just kill it. And they'll actually have probably some pretty good results in terms of metrics and whatever.
Right.
And then what happens is they go on a family vacation or the wedding happens or whatever ending that they are working towards happens, and then they go off the rails. And so I don't think the actionable step was done very well in those cases. And look, I'm not judging. I've done that way more times than I would like to tell people that I've done it. But what I tend to believe is if that's kind of the MO, then we haven't figured out the step in the habit-based sort of system yet. And I think that's where people tend to miss the boat is they want all the things to happen immediately. They want all of the habits to happen right now. And they're just not willing to play this long game quite yet. And that's our job is to kind of, as nutrition coaches, is to keep people accountable, support them, keep them patient, right? Like, because this is a long game. Again, we believe this is an infinite game. You are not going to win your health. Like you just don't win it. You don't win business. You don't win marriage. You don't win relationship. You don't win health. Like these are infinite games.
Right.
So the goal is to keep playing. Goal is to set the game, set it up to where you should just keep doing the thing. So if that means, hey, I'm going to go to a birthday party and I'm going to have a piece of cake for my kid's birthday party, great, do that. But figure out the system that allows that to be the end of it so that you can go back to being, making better decisions. Right. That's to me, that's the whole thing is if you can rig the game, if you can set it up to where you don't have a choice but to make better decisions, you're going to win. You're going to win the infinite. You're just going to be able to do the things that you want to do.
Right.
But if you don't have those systems in place and you just sort of willy-nilly, like, it'll work itself out. I'm patient zero. Like it just won't work out. So to me, the biggest gap, it's something that I'm continuously working on personally, as well as always thinking about how I can get my clients, whether they're nutrition or exercise or whatever else. How are we setting this thing up to where you get the outcomes that you want and it doesn't feel like work? It doesn't work on willpower, right? Like willpower, I don't have it. So I don't have things in the house that I don't want to eat because if I
Right.
did, they would be gone fairly
Yeah.
quickly. So it's like, how do you set those rules up where you can operate, still live your life in a way that you want to live, like you don't feel deprived or any of that kind of thing,
Right.
but set it up where you can make better decisions more often. And if you do that, more decisions that are better for your long-term outcome, I think then it's just patience. Then it's just do those things for long enough and you'll get where you want to go.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. At Precision, I don't know if you've heard of Dr. John Berardi.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
He's a founder, right? Wasn't he the founder of? I'm pretty sure he was
he
the founder.
founded the whole
Yeah.
thing. It's
Yeah.
massive
Yeah.
now, but in the coaching course, they said, just remember Berardi's first law of nutrition is if something is available, you're going to eat it. And like, you got to set up those rules for yourself and say
Yeah.
like, hey, if there's M&Ms in the cabinet and you're working from home, I don't care if you had grilled chicken for lunch. Like, you're gonna go eat the M&Ms,
Yes, they are.
and
Yep.
you
I
gotta
firmly
have those.
believe that, man. I firmly believe that. And again, you might be able to shove it away for a while, but there's going to come a point where you just mindlessly go about it, and then it becomes, all right, then what happens? Do you kind of reset, reframe, refocus, and kind of go about your business and go do what you need to do? Or do you do like I typically do and just go, well, I had a handful, I might as well have 5 more handfuls.
Right.
And so
Yep.
a maybe not awesome decision turned into a really, really poor one. That it's gonna, if I continue that, it's gonna obviously affect my long-term progress. And so yeah, I actually love that law. I think it's spot on.
Yeah, it makes total sense and causes me when I'm walking around the kitchen to be like, there's some shady stuff in here. Like, I got some stuff to clean out.
Well, look, man, that's another part. That's another layer of this, right? We've talked about layers so far. Is like, I've got a wife and a family who, Mia eats really, really well, but she doesn't eat the same way that I eat. And so, navigating that with kids and school lunches and, there's
Right.
all of these things that can affect how that actually plays in the real world. But if you're not thinking about your particular context and the rules that can work within that system, I think you're being lucky if you find success. I don't think it's a sustainable model for long-term progress. I think it has to be much more deliberate and conscious than that.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And at Pine, you kind of mentioned y'all's tagline. At Pine, one of the little taglines I use is like pursuing deep-rooted health and fitness. So like you can try and strong man your way or strong arm your way to like lucking out and being healthy basically.
Yeah.
Or you can have those tools in your tool belt that you've been chipping away at for 3, 6, 9 months to get to where you want to be, where you're not relying on just chance. Oh, like, oh, there wasn't good stuff at the dinner, so like I ate trash.
That's right.
Like
Yep.
you got to have those tools in
I
your
love it.
toolbox to
I
be
love
like,
it.
hey, I'm eating ahead, I'm planning ahead, I'm getting rid of the M&Ms, stuff like that.
Yeah, and again, it doesn't mean that you can never have an ice cream when you're on your date night with your wife. Like who wants to live like that? Like I don't.
Right.
But that's a conscious decision, right? It's more about, okay, I know what this is going to do. I'm going to make this decision. It's going to be in a way that is sort of a one-off, as opposed to, oh, I got 5 gallons in the fridge and I'm just going to take a chunk every time I want. It's like, no. I'm going to get 1 scoop. I'm going to have my fill. We're going to enjoy the night and we're going to move on. I think those are much more sustainable practices than just, well, I hope it works out, because personally, it has never worked out when I just sort of willy-nilly say, I'll kind of figure it out. And I don't think I found much experience that as a coach when that is the case as well.
Right. Yeah. That makes total sense. Yeah, it's good. There's so much we could kind of chase the rabbit trails on, but
dude, yeah. And it is. But it all comes back to first principles. I mean, you talked about the deep-rooted foundational behaviors.
Yeah.
That is our way of saying first principles. It's like, okay, you don't sleep. Like, what are we talking about here? Like, oh, you want to have all of the amino acids and all of the supplements, but you don't sleep. Like what, like you are we're completely flip-flopping
Yeah.
what we should be talking about. It's like, oh, you don't eat real food. Like you eat processed bars all the time. Okay. Like I get that, that might work for a while, but we need to have the conversation about what is first principles. And so,
Yeah.
what are the things that when we boil down all the fluff, we get rid of all the crap, like what are we actually trying to do? We're trying to eat whole food. We're trying to sleep. We're trying to exercise a few times a week. We're trying, we're trying to walk a lot, we're trying to hydrate. We're trying to stretch. Like there's probably 6 or 7 principles that are really fundamental. And if you hit those, like you're golden, man. Like you're going to kill it. Everything else is gravy.
Yeah.
So I love the deep rooted fundamentals. I think those are what we need to be focused on. And it's increasingly more difficult to have those conversations because on the internet, they hear optimize, your amino acid profile, but they haven't eaten 50 grams of protein yet. And it's like, what are you doing, man?
Yeah.
Like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
So
it's crazy. And yeah, I won't go down that rabbit trail of like all the voices on social media and stuff like that just really hurt people. But we're kind of talking about like people are missing the mark. There's a lot out there. People should just kind of slow down, get those tools in their tool belt. What would you say one of the biggest misconceptions is, or some misconceptions are about nutrition?
So I continually evolve with this. So back in 2015, I think roughly 2015, 2014, something like that. I'd heard a podcast about with Tim Ferriss and Dominic D'Agostino, who's a professor he's a professor down at South Florida, I believe. And it was talking about the ketogenic diet. And when you hear keto now, it was not the same as what he was talking about. He was talking about legitimate clinical ketogenic diet, 90% fat, 8% protein, like very, very, very caloric restriction. And the application for that was, epileptic seizures. The Department of Defense was trying to work on, I believe it was underwater sickness, right? I think it was nitrogen sickness, if I'm not mistaken. They were trying to work on some of those things with this ketogenic diet. And what they had started finding out was it had some neurodegenerative properties, protective properties. So Alzheimer's, dementia, et cetera. Well, I've got some family history of Alzheimer's in my family history. So when that popped up, I was like, "Ooh, I'm interested in this." The weight loss was a side effect of that whole experiment. It was way more about, brain health than anything else. And so I was super gung ho on keto for a few years. And then, it was very low carb. It was high protein, no carb. It was high fat, no carb. So I'd sort of, played around. And then over the last, call it 18 months to 2 years, I've added much more fruit back into the diet. I still don't eat a lot of carbs, but when I do, they are whole food based. And so, I'll eat obviously much more fruit, carbohydrate, but what I found is the way I eat currently, I eat almost zero processed food, almost zero. And so I eat a lot of protein, try to eat a lot of protein. I eat a lot of fruit, but I don't eat a lot of vegetables just because I don't tolerate them very well. So some of them I can tolerate, butternut squash, which is technically fruit, but some of the things that are considered vegetables I can deal with. Some of them are, I just don't tolerate them very well. And so when I tell people that, they're like, "Oh, so you're low carb and keto." And I'm like, "No, man, I eat 150 grams of carbs a day in fruit. Like I'm not low carb at all."
Yeah.
But I have turned into much more whole food based. Some of that is from HSN and Precision and companies like that.
Right.
And I've found something that works for me. So I don't feel deprived at all. Like I love the stuff that I get to eat on a daily basis. I don't feel like, my sweet tooth isn't getting, I put a little bit of honey and some Greek yogurt with some berries, and that is like the jam for me. Like it's so good. So for me, it's been Okay, I probably missed the ball with carbohydrate for a few years. Like I just and look, I was fine with it. Like but I could overeat, right? I could
Yeah.
overdo some of the nutrient or some of the denser caloric stuff that without the nutrient sort of, profile. So over the last couple of years, it's been much more about whole food. And I think the misconception, to go back to your question, is when people hear keto now, it is not even remotely close to what an actual ketogenic diet
Right.
is.
Yeah.
And so they hear keto and they're like, oh, I'm just going to eat all the keto friendly cereals and think it's going to
Sure.
work out. And it's like, I'm not sure how that works out, which is why, again, we go back to first principles. If the first principle is whole food first, then you don't have to worry about any of that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Like you don't have to
Yeah.
worry about is the xylitol gonna affect my this, that, and the other
Yeah.
thing because it's all keto friendly. It's like, no, go eat real food, and then you probably won't even want the junk anyway.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think for me, people become super dug into their trenches when it comes to nutrition. But I
Yeah.
think if you worry about first principles, meaning whole food first,
Mm-hmm.
then do whatever works for you. You want to eat super high protein with no vegetables? Great. You want to eat, super vegetarian with some, tofu in there? Like whatever, knock yourself out. Um, but you're eating real food, which is much more sustainable than, I'm just going to eat Quest bars. And look,
Yeah.
not knocking Quest. I
Sure.
dig them.
Yeah.
But there was a
100%.
period of time where I was eating 2 or 3 of those bars a day, and
Yeah.
it's just not, it's not what we should be doing. So
Right.
for me, I think the misconception becomes, you don't have to dig into your trench. This isn't World War One. There's a lot of ways to do this that can be very satisfying and lead you to long-term progress if you follow some basic principles.
Right. Right.
The first being whole food, right?
Yeah, for sure. Whole Foods is big. It's so huge and definitely something that people don't understand. Man, I forgot who said it. She was on, there's a lady being interviewed. I think she was a doctor. Huge proponent for Whole Foods. She said, hey, if it didn't grow or breathe, then it's a science experiment.
Mm-hmm. That's
Like
right.
she's like, you got to get back to Whole Foods because
That's right.
you're losing a lot of the nutrients by eating whatever it is, bars all day
Yeah.
or shakes all day or
Yeah.
whatever it is. So
And
people,
there's times for that, right? I mean, like,
oh yeah,
if I'm eating 220 grams of protein a day just because this is my body composition goal,
right,
well, that's a lot of protein. I might have to supplement
true,
the shake. But what people do is like, oh, I'll just have 4 shakes and call it a day. And it's like, you
right,
probably missed the boat there somewhere.
yeah,
So yeah, no, I love the sentiment, and it speaks to, man, simplify the process. There's
hmm
so much stuff that you can get into the weeds with that if you just blow all the fluff away and go back to the most basic tenets of this, you're going to be fine.
yeah,
And because you could do it in a way that it works for you. You want to eat a boatload of vegetables? Great. You want to eat, fruit all day? That's cool too. But the first principles become the thing. The more I go about exercise, nutrition, all of the healthy behaviors that we're talking about, it always goes back to first principles. What is the principle that everything else is laid on top of? And
right,
if we go back to that, we're going to be okay. We're going to be
yeah,
okay. But one thing that happens is people optimize things they have no business optimizing.
hmm.
So, oh, he wrote Atomic Habits. Now I'm drawing a blank on his name.
Clear,
James Clear.
James
James Clear. He has a saying says you can't optimize a habit that's not built, right? You can't
hmm.
have optimize something that's not there. And I think that's where people get ahead of it. We're susceptible to marketing. We are instant gratification type of animal. And so we want the thing that is new and shiny and bright that promises the result that we want right now. And
Right,
ultimately that's not how this is supposed to work.
hmm.
This is a long-term process.
Yeah,
And if you go back to first principles, I think you have a much better chance to get there than, insert the next keto friendly.
yeah.
He's sneaking around again.
That's funny. Yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah.
Couple more questions for you. These two are similar, same question, different audiences.
Okay.
What would you say to someone who's not yet started on their health and fitness journey? They're kind of coasting. They're
Yeah.
not really, they're not in the game. Um, I know you can't win or lose the health and fitness game, but right now they might be losing.
They're not even playing, and that's the point.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what would you say to those people?
Something similar that I mentioned with Tim Ferriss, that the good plan that they'll follow is better than the perfect one they won't. So we know that action begets action.
Mhm.
So any step, however small, even if it's in the wrong direction, is better for long-term success than not doing anything because I don't know which way to step.
Yeah.
So even if you were like, hey, I'm just going to eat bars all day and see how that works out, cool. In a month, you'll kind of switch, but you have at least known what direction to run away from at that
Right.
point.
Mhm.
And I think that's a underrated thought process. Is like, okay, I don't want to take a step in the wrong direction. So I'm just not going to take any steps. And then
Right.
6 months, a year, 2 years, 10 years, 50 years from now, they still haven't taken any steps. When
Yeah.
in fact, if they would have taken a terrible step, a step in the opposite direction, figured out that that was the wrong direction, and then reversed course, they would be much further down the road. So
Yeah.
the question for somebody that is not even playing the infinite game yet is something. It doesn't matter what it is, just do something. You've got to start, even if it's walking to the mailbox. That's enough
Mhm.
because then you can start to increase the habit.
Yeah.
So to a story to prove this kind of point, Clear talks about, it was an Instagram reel that he posted a while back. And he talked about one of his clients who had lost something like 150 pounds or something like that, something
Dang.
ridiculously
Wow.
crazy. And he said for the first 6 months, might have been longer than that, might have been a year, something like that. It was a long time. He was not allowed to stay at the gym for more than 5 minutes. So if he got one rep of a seated bench press on a machine, great. Walk out, go to the car and go home. He was not allowed to stay more than 5 minutes.
Interesting.
So people were like, well, how did he lose all the weight? It was like, because it wasn't about the workout. It was about the habit of working out. And so after 6 months, it was just the thing that he did. And now it's like, okay, well, now I've already done one. I might as well do 10. I might as well do 30 or whatever. And so it was just about building the habit. It was about doing the thing. And it didn't matter how grandiose or long or hard. It didn't matter. It was just doing the thing that allowed him to start building onto that particular habit. So
Right.
I think it's much more about take a step, even if it's in the wrong direction. Just
Yeah.
do something.
Yeah. That's really good. And don't spend a ton of time figuring out maybe like the best thing or
At
the
least
best app
initially.
or the best plan. Like
At least
just,
initially.
yeah.
I mean, when you get to the point where you're, 10 years in of just doing the same, first principles, just killing those, well, now you can have a conversation about the
Oh yeah.
optimal thing.
Mm-hmm.
But until you're long enough in that game, it's just doing the foundational stuff, doing the deep rooted fundamental habits. Like those are what you got to focus on.
Right. On the similar vein, let's take someone who is playing the game. They are pursuing their health and fitness. They've got some basic practices down in the precision terms. They'd be like that level one kind of person. They're getting those fundamentals down. They're pursuing, they're taking those steps, but they're in a slump. They might need a kick in the pants. What would you tell those kind of people?
That's a good one. Because that seems much less about, well, I don't know about less, but now we've got to do some psychological sort of digging, right? And look, I've gone through this several times where, I'll go, it might be I'm really busy at work or we've got a big project coming up or whatever. And I'll just go weeks where I don't do any kind of CrossFit workout or real workout. I'll walk a lot typically every day, but I might not sort of do exercise, right?
Right. Yeah.
And before I know it, I'm like, I'm just kind of in a slump and I don't really want to do anything. those become kind of challenging. And so at that point, I think it's important to kind of, as the question that we discussed when we first met was like, what are we training for? I don't know. Well, for me, in my experience, if I'm doing burpees and thrusters without any sort of end game, and it's really difficult to like get jazzed about that.
Right. Yeah.
So I like to introduce a lot of play. So are we training and doing the stuff that is boring? All right, well, let's find something that we think is fun. And you can gamify anything. This is exercise, nutrition, doesn't matter. We can play a little bit of a game, like, okay, we're gonna go back to first principles. We're gonna, there's a lady named EC Sinkowski who has a company called 800 grams, the 800 gram challenge. Like, you can gamify that. Get you a partner, have a little challenge, see who can get to 800 grams faster. So now all of a sudden you've got a little bit of a competition. It's a little bit of, have some stakes in the game, whatever. Now we've added another little habit. And I find that when I gamify stuff, or I feel like I'm playing a game, it sort of lights a little bit of a, not necessarily competitive fire, because I think those days are largely behind me. But I get to like I get a little earned dopamine. How about that? I like, ooh, I did that thing, and I earned that little spike of like, that felt awesome. And so, again, if I'm just doing burpees and thrusters and box jumps forever and ever and ever without sort of knowing why, I'm going to be, it's just sort of get into that lull. But I think figuring out something to add a little bit of playtime becomes fun. It activates some of this. It probably activates something in your neurochemistry that's far beyond my pay grade.
Right.
And you, for me, that's sort of makes me flip that switch where I'm like, okay, I can get back into the groove a little bit.
Right.
And then once I get back in the groove, then it becomes a habit again. And so it really becomes habit creation. But how do you generate that habit creation? Well, that's really, again, the game. That's really what it's all about.
Yeah. I mean, you can even gamify stuff just like with mindset. It's like, okay, last time I did burpees, I hit 9 or whatever, and I gassed out. Let's get to 12 this time, and like try and beat your own. I mean, I think that's why like Olympic lifting and like big lifts and stuff like that are so addicting, is because like the numbers you put up before.
It's
almost
easy
like
to
a
kind
game,
of, that's right. And it's easy to compare.
Yep.
It's easy to compare. Okay, I did 1 kilo more than I did last week. Win. It's harder to do that when you're like, okay, my score wasn't quite as good as I would have liked it to be, but then I have to factor in I didn't sleep because my infant was up all night, or I'm up for a promotion, so I'm stressed out and I've been working overtime, and so there's all these little variables, and that's the challenge. Like for me, it's fun to try to figure that stuff out, but it's also very exhausting because you want people to get better. You want to chase those 1% gains all the time but you have to know that there's things that might affect it day to day. And so again, long term, my trajectory might be going up for a long time, but day to day, I might have these little ups and downs that become in the moment very discouraging, discouraging. And that's you got to be a little bit of a psychologist in some regards with people, because you have to keep the perspective of like, no, today sucked, but today relative to where we started, like you are, chasms better than you were, and so it's those are the challenges with trying to figure out where people are and lulls and all that kind of things, because there's so many variables that are independent for everybody. They're so context dependent, and you have to figure all of those things out and then make sure that they feel good moving forward. And that, sometimes, quite frankly, that's probably a little bit out of our scope of practice, even though we're almost charged to do it by nature.
Yeah. And behavior change.
That's all it is.
It's so complicated, but not at the same time.
That's
like,
I would agree.
What motivates people? And when people say they want to meet this goal, how can you get there? And what are those obstacles?
That's right. Yeah. And again, because it's individual, it's fun because you get to kind of dig and kind of puzzle piece it together, but it's exhausting, it can be anyway. But it is behavior change. We are in the business. We say this all the time to my staff. We are in the business of behavior change. We have different vehicles to do that. We have exercise, we have nutrition, we have, Olympic lifting. Like there's vehicles that we can do that, but ultimately we're in the habit, or we're in the business of behavior change, so that people can change their lives.
Right.
And we're just here to help them along the journey. They're the hero. We're just helping them.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Love it. Well, I want to be respectful of your time. We almost hit an hour, and it's felt like,
dude,
20 minutes.
Like that. Went by so quick.
Love it.
So
hey,
quick.
Tell me, I know you touched a second ago, or not a second ago, in a previous email about a gogi. I see you every time I see you, I'm on the mat or something. And
are you over there? Like you're over there on a daily basis? Okay. So
not every day when I can,
not every day.
but yeah.
So Mike, I did Krav Maga for 4 years or so, but this is a decade ago.
Okay.
When we were down in Georgia.
Right.
When we had actually when Mia moved down, I sort of stopped doing it, and then had kids and so on and so forth. Well, when our kids are older now, are old enough that they are taking jiu-jitsu over to Gogi. And so once they got over there, it was just a matter of time. I'm over here scratching, going like, I gotta get,
Yeah.
And so I do Krav with Larry Scott
Sweet.
now, and it's just a matter of time before I start rolling again.
Yes.
It's just a matter of time.
That's awesome.
So yeah, so it's again, and this is an outlet for me where I don't feel like I'm beating myself up all the time.
Right.
Like I'll do a couple CrossFit workouts a week. I'll do a couple of martial arts or Krav or jiu-jitsu workouts. I'll walk a lot, and I feel like I'm capable. I feel like I'm athletic. I feel like I'm doing the things, and it keeps it fun for me.
Yeah.
As opposed to just doing. And again, I own a CrossFit gym, but I personally do not do CrossFit every single day. Like I just can't do it.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I get beat up, and it doesn't feel great after a while. So I give me a couple of workouts, like get some Olympic lifting, get some squatting, get some pressing, get some running in there, and then let's go, hit a bag.
Yeah. I love it. That's awesome.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Are you a jits practitioner? Is that what you're doing? Okay.
Yep. Doing the jiu-jitsu. Super.
No, are you a gi or a no gi kind of guy?
A little bit of both, actually.
Yeah.
I was doing no gi. I don't have like the training shorts and the compression stuff and all that. So
you don't have all the rash guards yet?
No, not yet.
Come on, man.
I need them, dude. I need the long sleeve ones because those dudes get sweaty and gross.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, they
nasty.
do.
But
they do.
Got a gi from Origin.
Okay. Yeah, Jocko.
Freaking love it. It's
everybody I've heard says it's really good. Actually, my brother, who's he used to be over at Gogi as well.
Okay.
Just went to a Maine or a jiu-jitsu camp in Maine with Jocko, Dean Lister, like all those guys. So yeah, he went up there for a week. Dude. And just got Khalipa was up there, just a bunch of gorilla monsters throwing each other around. Yeah.
That camp is expensive, but
I'm sure
it'd be worth every penny.
I'm sure. Yeah. So we got a little video with the kids. Like it was really cool.
No way. That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. It was really cool.
Yeah, I'm super new at it. I had some martial arts experience from when I was in the Marines.
Yeah.
But that's just, it's mixed martial arts. You're striking and knives and rolling a little bit. But I was super intrigued. Like, how do I defend myself if I'm on my back? Because I'm tall, little guys just take my legs and knock me over all the time. So
yeah, I think jiu-jitsu and some striking, like it's super practical.
Oh yeah.
And it's interesting once I started taking Krav, how do I say this without sounding paranoid? The way I operate in the world is different than what I operated with before.
Yeah.
I'll just say it that way.
Oh yeah.
So where I sit in restaurants, how I maneuver, maybe even sometimes what I carry on me.
True. True.
All of that stuff changed once you. And again, I think that's probably a good thing, but there's probably some times where I might be a little bit too paranoid, right? Like, but that's just how it is now.
Better that way than not, in my opinion.
That's kind of how I think too. But
yeah, cool.
But yeah, it's good fun. I enjoy having another outlet other than CrossFit. Cause I played intramural sports for over a decade.
Cool.
Before we had our kids. And then once that went away, it was like, okay, where's the sport, the competitive game outlet? And this sort of satisfies that for now. So yeah, it's fun. I really like doing it. It's a good time.
Awesome. Cool. Well, I'll probably run into you over there.
Oh
at
yeah,
some
for
point
sure.
this week or next.
Now my eyes are going to be open. I'm going to be,
yeah, there you go.
be looking for
I'm
you.
the tallest dude in there getting his butt whipped. So
listen, we all get our butt. Listen, we all get our butt whipped, man. Don't,
True.
it's good. Beginner games. Like you'll just survive for a while, and then all of a sudden it'll start clicking.
Right. Cool. Well, Trey, I appreciate you.
Yeah, man. Appreciate
so much for your time, and hopefully we'll get to chat soon.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Thank you, brother. Have
All
a
right,
good
man.
one.
Bye-bye. You.